Again, once you have decent sound going in, really great live sound is simply an artful application of three effects: EQ, reverb, and compression. The first two I'm sure you're familiar with, and we'll get super specific about how to use them. But compression, on the other hand, seems to confuse a lot of folks, so let's start there. Let's dive into that first. Compression reduces the dynamic range of a signal. What does that mean? Let's say this is the dynamic range of your signal. You've got your quieter sounds down here, and you've got your louder parts up here. And we use a compressor to lower the peaks and boost up the valleys. So instead of having this, we'll have a signal that'll look more like, well, let's draw a second one. This is our range. That's compression at its most basic. And if you have like a one knob compressor, like on the Fishman Spectrum Aura or on an inexpensive analog mixer, it's managing all the behind the scenes stuff to achieve that for you. If you turn the knob more, you narrow the dynamic range more. But let's look under the hood a little to see how this operates. Basically, you're setting a soft limit on how loud something can get by setting a threshold and a ratio. You'll have to forgive my crappy handwriting. Any signal that's louder than the threshold will be reduced by the ratio. So let's say the ratio is 2:1. And let's say the threshold, just to make things easy, is 0 decibels. If you put a signal that's 2 dB, so 2 dB louder than 0, in, you're going to get 1 dB out because it's compressed at a ratio of 2:1. If you put 4 dB in, you'll get 2 dB out. Threshold, ratio. Let's say we change the ratio now to 4:1. Let's make this 4:1 here. If we put that same 4 dB in here, now it's going to come out as 1 dB. It was 4 dB louder than our 0 decibel threshold, so now it's going to come out 1 dB louder than that threshold because it was compressed at a ratio of 4:1. Okay, all the stuff is good on paper, but it masks what we actually use compression for. Because compression pulls down the loudness of a signal, it's usually accompanied by a little bit of makeup gain. So, we've got threshold, ratio, gain. Gain or level, it's the third setting on a compressor. The threshold and the ratio tame the peaks of our loudest signal, and the gain or level boosts up the volume of our quietest notes. The gain is measured in dB. It's how much you're boosting the bottom end of things, the quietest stuff. Pop music that's mixed for drive time radio is usually very compressed because they know you're listening to it in a noisy environment. So while some of the expressiveness of music is taken away by reducing the dynamic fluctuations, compression makes sure that you hear everything that they want you to hear. And in much the same way, your live show will greatly benefit from compression, playing in a noisy bar. On a fancy studio compressor, like the one you're going to have on your fancy digital mixer, there are two more settings to consider: attack and release. Attack controls how quickly the compressor kicks in, and it's measured in milliseconds. And if we set the attack for something that's too high, our compressor will be too slow to react and the peaks won't be affected until they're loud enough and sustained enough to trigger the compression for however many milliseconds that is. On the other hand, if we set the attack too low, our compressor will rush in and it'll clip the transients of our loudest signals, and it'll result in a sound that's unnatural and sort of muffled. Oftentimes, compressors will give you an either-or setting for the attack that's called a knee. As in hard knee, soft knee. It refers to the shape of the curve on the graph, but it's pretty easy to keep track of. A hard knee is a quick attack. It's useful for compressing things with fast transients and low sustain, like drums. Soft knee is more useful for the sorts of things you'll be using, like guitars and vocals. Okay, so the flip side of attack is release. It's also measured in milliseconds, and it controls how long after the signal dips below the threshold that the compressor lets go. If we set the release really short, the compressor will disengage too fast to make much of a perceptible difference. And if we set the release too long, the compressor will hang on too long and it'll create an unnatural pumping effect where the compressor boosts a decaying signal. So instead of ringing out and gradually getting softer in a linear fashion, the level will jump. Okay, that's like entirely too much theory about how compressors work. So let's get down to it. What settings should you use on your compressor? On your vocal channel, you're going to set the ratio to 3:1. You're going to use soft knee or the auto settings that are in there for attack and release. You're going to turn the threshold all the way up, all the way counterclockwise. And you're going to sing into your mic at a medium volume, and you're going to be watching the reduction meter, the little lights. They're probably labeled GR for gain reduction. And you're going to sing into the mic, and you're going to turn down the threshold until you start to see on your little meter here for gain reduction, you start seeing this thing lighting up one little segment or two little segments here. Louder singing should light up more of those, right? Because you're putting in more signal. It's reducing it by more. You're watching the compressor kick in. This is actually really helpful because as you see it happen on the screen, it will make a lot more sense in your mind. Okay, so you've got it 3:1, you set the threshold all the way up, you sang it in a medium volume until it started to light up a little bit over on this side, and as you sang louder, it lit up a little bit more. The gain, you can leave at 0 because there's generally not enough reduction at these settings to need much compensation. If, like me, you have a lower voice that tends to get lost in the mix, especially at the bottom of your range, you can goose the signal a little with like 2 or 3 dB of gain. Okay, that's for your voice. For your guitar, you will also start with the ratio at 3:1. Again, you're going to have the soft knee or whatever auto settings it has for attack and release. You're going to turn the threshold all the way up, all the way clockwise. And now you're going to play your guitar in a medium volume while watching the reduction meter. And you're going to lower the threshold until you get that first reduction meter light blinking. And if when you lay into the guitar, it should give you more lights. And you can just leave it there, but then you're going to want to, as you're playing your show, make an adjustment to this. If, as you're playing, you feel like it's too squished, like you hit it and it doesn't respond appropriately, sort of like you're punching underwater, you can reduce the ratio a little bit. And if, on the other hand, it doesn't seem like the compression is helping to keep your loudest signals in check, you can increase the ratio a little bit. That's compression. It's unsexy, but it's indispensable. Properly functioning effects and sound guys and bass players, they are worth their weight in gold. But most of the time, they're invisible. Your audience really only notices them if something goes wrong. Sucks for them, but that's the nature of the beast. Compression.